This is Derek Brawl with American City and County. I have with me Ted Terry, the mayor of Clarkston, Georgia. And Clarkston's been in the news recently due to a controversial plan to decriminalize marijuana. The possession of less than an ounce within city limits would be a ticket only offense, similar to a traffic violation. If successful, Clarkston would be the first city in Georgia to decriminalize low levels of marijuana possession. So, Mayor Terry, why do you think this is an important step for Clarkston to take right now?
Yeah, well, the Georgia legislature passed a law in 1983 that gives concurrent jurisdiction to the municipal court in the instance of 1 ounce of marijuana possession or less. And this state law was upheld by the Court of Appeals in 1997. And so this has been, in the books for over 32 years now. And I think, over that time period, the so-called war on drugs and the policies that our governments, from the federal down to the state and local levels, have been a failure in a lot of ways. And so this literally is the only thing that a municipality in Georgia can do on a drug policy. And we just feel that it's time to take a more evidence-based approach to these issues for a change.
Okay. So, you mentioned that there is a law on the books that could be used, to sort of give you guys the legal justification for this. But the Georgia Prosecuting Attorneys Council has basically come out and said that you don't have the legal authority to do this. Why is that? And,
Yeah.
how do you plan to actually, accomplish this decriminalization, legally speaking?
Yeah. I believe his exact quote was that you cannot make an illegal substance legal, and he's exactly right about that. We are not legalizing anything, and it's kind of a misnomer. We could say it's de facto decriminalization, but what we're really talking about is deprioritization. And so it still is illegal to possess marijuana under 1 ounce in Clarkston, but the policy we're talking about is changing how that offense is punished.
Gotcha. Okay. So how's the community responded to this? Has it been pretty positive? Has there been any pushback?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of positive response actually. Clarkston has been known in the past as being sort of a speed trap, quite frankly. A government that's a small city, 1.4 square miles, that in the previous years before I was elected, really had a reputation as an area where traffic enforcement and aggressive policing were sort of standard. And so, I think people are recognizing and welcoming this notion that we ought to focus more on preventing burglaries and stopping violent crime in our cities as opposed to focusing our police resources, our tax dollars on something that we consider not to be a true public health or public safety threat in Clarkston.
Okay. So, you said that this is sort of a de facto way of deprioritizing, enforcement of marijuana, policy in Clarkston. How has law enforcement responded to that? Is this something they're on board with, or is it more? How are they looking at it?
Yeah, well, our a lot of so we had 70 arrests last year in Clarkston. Most of those were adjudicated in the municipal court system. However, the fine is set by the judge, and so that could be anywhere between $400 and $1,000, which is sort of the average fine for that low-level possession. And so the police have already been sort of using this ticket-only offense, policy that's been in our charter for many years now, and I think that is so there's already sort of an informal policy on this issue. We're just trying to make it not punitive. 400, 500 to $1,000 for someone who is young or maybe who working on minimum wage salaries. That's a huge chunk of their annual salary, and that we don't want to create a system in Clarkston where we're punishing poor people and punitively punishing them to the point where it makes it harder and harder for them to rise out of poverty.
Gotcha. So it seems like this is sort of a tide that's slowly turning in America in the way that we're thinking about drug policy and the way that we enforce it, the way that we even think about drug use and drug abuse in this country, and the responsibility of local county state governments in that. Um, what do you see the future of this being? Is this something that we sort of need to get on board with, as policymakers? Do we need to start thinking in this way of decriminalizing, legalizing, looking at it as a public health issue? How is this changing?
Yeah, I mean, counties and city governments, I think, are laboratories of democracy, and so we have the opportunity to try different things in different jurisdictions. And the key point, and the key principle, and what we're looking at right now is the evidence-based policies. And so we actually want to look at what the evidence is. We know that over the past 35 years that the current law on how these low-level drug offenses are prosecuted, is unjust, and so we need to make it a more just, situation. And so, yeah, so over the next 6 months, Clarkston, we're hopefully going to pass this thing in May, and we'll have 6 months before the legislative session starts again in January next year, to be able to report back to the legislature on how this experiment is going. It's definitely within the realm of possibilities that we create a policy that may not work, and we may want to tweak it a little bit. But you got to start somewhere. The key is that what we've been doing is not working, and if we keep doing the same thing, expect a different result, nothing's going to change. So this is our opportunity as as a small city, to find out what's going to work best for our community.
Okay. And you said that sort of policy isn't working right now. And do you mean by that it's just an unjust policy? It unfairly targets the poor? The penalties are too high? What do you mean by it not working?
Yeah, that's what it seems like. So in theory, if you get caught with less than 1 ounce of marijuana, you could go to be sent into the state court system, and you could get a misdemeanor, but it gives you a criminal record, including thousands of dollars in fines or probation fees. And again, if you got a worker working in your town for $15,000, which is around the Georgia minimum wage right now, that is a huge chunk of their annual salary. And so we're setting up a system that is punishing poor people for being poor. So if they can't afford that fine right away, which is often the case, then they have to go on probation. They have to pay it and pay interest on it. I think that we're seeing sort of the results of austerity at the state and federal level that has caused local governments to have to readdress how they fund their governments. And so just like what you saw in Ferguson, Missouri, where you had a police department that was making a lot of money off the local residents there, which is great for the department because they were fully funded, but it caused such systemic poverty and injustice in the system that overall it made the community less safe and had an overall negative impact on it. And so we're trying to just have a more compassionate approach to these issues. I think in a lot of ways drug policies have been based around morality, whether it's good or bad to do something. What we really ought to be talking about as governments is how you deal with abuse, right? So we need to get out of the business of saying what's right and what's wrong in terms of morals and say what is the public health issue at stake here? What is the public safety issue at stake here? And actually use evidence to say, what, in this situation, we think actually having this high fee fines as well as potential jail time, that is just not working. And so we need to try something different.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's all I have. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and for sharing your opinions and your views. It was really helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. And I would like to add also, at the same time that our public safety and legal committee are reviewing this marijuana ordinance, we're also looking at updating our indoor smoking ordinance as well to update it for the rise of smokeless tobacco products. And one of the biggest criticisms I got about this is, oh, you're going to be encouraging people to smoke marijuana or to drive under the influence. And my message to them is that drug dealing, committing crimes while in possession, and certainly smoking in public areas that aren't allowed is still illegal and will not be tolerated in Clarkston. But again, we're trying to take an approach where we say, what are the true public health and public safety issues at stake? The last time I checked, tobacco and alcohol are some of the most used and abused drugs, legal drugs that are out there, and it's causing tens and hundreds of thousands of people to die or get sick here every year. And so we can focus our resources on things that we know actually can make us safer and healthier as a community, then we're doing the right thing as elected officials. That's our job, is to try to make a more prosperous and healthy community.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah. Thanks again for talking with us. And
Yeah, thank you.
best of luck there in Clarkston.
All right. Thanks, Derek.
All right.